Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's topic, I'll be addressing the review copy of a title I received from Nitetime Studios, their game Chrono Ghost. Sit back and relax as I take my time explaining the nuances of this challenging platformer, and find out if you think you'd even have the ghost of a chance at enjoying it. You are the Chrono Ghost, granted time powers by the spirit of time. That's about it, really. I mean, yes, there's an optional, I am making vigorous air quotes here, bit of story you unlock as you progress through the game on normal or higher difficulty sprinkled between the chapters. But, honestly, it mostly comprises of the game asking you a bunch of questions with absolutely no intention of answering them. Spoilers? The big reveal? You are the Chrono Ghost! I mean, there's a tiny thing after that, but if you're actively looking for compelling lore, you're not really apt to find any here. That said, there is plenty of gameplay to address, so let's hop to it. First off, this game recommends a controller, and I would second that. It's definitely a controller type of game, especially with the way it asks you to input a number of controls simultaneously. That said, I couldn't get to work with my PS4 controller. There's no in-game control changing, and the control editor in the launcher didn't work either for me, so I was stuck using the keyboard. Boo. That out of the way, Chrono Ghost is a platformer of the whole twitchy reflex-oriented sort, where you explode into the ether whenever you hit any sort of hostile obstacle, leading you to jumping and dashing through the whole lot of them. Though your jumps feel pretty garbage. Anyways, to kick things off, you'll need to pick a difficulty. Now, whilst the game does allude to there being story, I didn't really care for it one whit, so I just say pick whatever difficulty you're comfortable with, especially since the differences in difficulty are mainly limitations. In normal mode, as opposed to casual, you only have 15 minutes to clear each level, as opposed to an unlimited amount of time, and 100 lives, which, if either should expire, you start the stage from scratch. Hard mode ups the ante and limits you to 3 lives. And I ain't having it. See, whilst conceptually Chrono Ghost is neat, with all, you're a ghost, plus you have time powers, I hadn't mentioned till now, but yes, any green object in the map you can slow down, speed up, or even stop for a limited time only. Call now for 99 plus 95 shipping and handling. In practice, I ended up walking away from it with a gradual sense of frustration, and that's because whilst there are segments of the game which certainly play like an adequate hazards-based platformer, rife with spears, axes, buzzsaws, and other torture and maiming implements, the fact of the matter is a lot of my deaths felt incredibly cheap. Things like the dash having a fairly lengthy cooldown meant certain pits where you dash, jump, dash in an effort to clear it would see me plummeting into the void from the dash timing out, or the jump being just a millisecond too low. Buzzsaws from off-screen and too high to jump would shred through me at super speed, and they'd be red so I couldn't even slow them down. There was something distinctly frustrating about the difficulty in which I had to see oncoming obstacles, especially with a large number of them hidden in objects until they were rushing through the air like a Stinger missile, or an apple and I wanna be the guy. Like, to give you folks a perspective, I beat this game in 107 minutes. Within that time frame, I managed to fit in 465 deaths, and so many I missed that number felt cheap. Frequently, learning to avoid something came at the cost of having died to it repeatedly to learn how it functioned. The last level is especially vicious in just throwing unavoidable death at you occasionally, when it's reloading its death traps. And earlier levels torment you with things like green objects which don't necessarily behave with your time powers like you'd expect them to. Oh, and whilst I did say the majority of obstacles are just killy implements of doom, there are a few environmental effects. Whilst the ice level is fairly standard fare, though the very slow startup to movement is absolutely annoying, the fire level more or less grants you a permanent debuff where you move like you're sinking into sludge. It felt a lot less fire-themed and more like walking through 5 feet of tar whenever you weren't air dashing, which when you're trying to do high mobility dodging, has you praying, "Deliver me from this RNGesus, please." Simply put, by the end of the game, I was just livid. Audio-wise, I mean, I guess I have something to say about Chrono Ghost here. Its music and altogether audio is nice, and there were these neat audio clips at the end of stages that were like eerie and a little ominous that I hoped were going to lead into something more towards the story. Sadly, they didn't. Also, graphically, Chrono Ghost is fairly pretty, though there were a number of times where its presentation led me to trying to jump onto a piece of background/foreground and then promptly falling to my death. There's also some annoying segments where platforms you need to jump on are blocked by foreground, or obstacles are blocked by those, and you can't quite see them until they're killing you. Seriously, it's a pretty game, but don't do this! Please, I beg of you! So yeah, here we are, at the end of this review. And honestly, Chrono Ghost was not my cup of tea. It wasn't just that the game didn't click with me, it was that I literally found it unenjoyable. I died. And then I died some more. And then this glorious fragment of lucidity tore through my psyche, and I put down the game and went off and did some other stuff. And then I got bothered because I never really saw any story, and wasn't that the point of normal? So I decided to dive back in, and it was not worth it. I beat the game, but it was not worth it. Essentially, I personally rate this game as a fail. It felt cheap, unfun, the controls and the jumps were awful, and the dashing felt chunky, and the cooldown would have been peerless in how miserable it was even on a controller. I would be hard-pressed to recommend this to someone unless they were a genuine fan of masochistically difficult games that were punishing in not just their level design, but their controls, and unrepentant about it. That said, let's call this a wrap. Just give me a sec to simmer down. So, I'd like to thank you folks for both tuning in and sticking till the end of this, which is a bit more ranty and rambly than normal. Whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I'd love to hear from you folks in the comments, and for those interested in more indie reviews or interviews with the developers, feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when we have a new release. Lastly, join our Discord, link in the description in the banner, so you can become a part of our community. It's pretty nice there. Anywho, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.